The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Welcome to Film Connection. I'm Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, your co-host. My co-host is not here, Bill Ames. He's doing much more apparently important work, but he'll be returning next month for Film Connection. So I'd like to introduce today, October 22nd, 2024, two guests, Neill Anderson and our very own Joe Taft. Neill is the screenwriter and director, and Joe is the producer of the documentary film, Downsize Me. And we have a poster here showing you that. Okay.
That's the one. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And I had the pleasure and privilege of viewing the premiere of this film a few weeks ago at Queeset House. Very impressive. But this was a long journey, wasn't it, Joe?
Yeah, I think Neill could probably speak to how long the journey is better than I could.
Okay.
Well, and I thank you very much for jumping on and helping me do it, and I give him full credit for a lot. But yes, I was working with two other guys, and well, it just didn't work out, and I was kind of on my own, and then COVID took off, and that kind of put me off course for a while. And I do have a lot of thanks to Kim Pinkett here, who, when COVID was cooling down, and I did a John F. Kennedy birthplace televised documentary for ECAT back in 2017 in honor of what would have been John F. Kennedy's 100th birthday. And it was a pretty decent, huge, good success. That Kim was like, Neill, let's do an on the road thing again. And I just threw it out there and said, how about the Edward Gorey house? And she said, I want to do it. So we did. I called, made the reservations. We filmed it. I edited it. But I think what I'm saying is that's what got me back into the filming. And I said, okay, when I'm done with this, I'll get back into making my documentary. And that's where I knew I needed help. And that's where Joe came in.
All right. Great. So, Joe, it's been a long journey, hasn't it?
I'd say so. Much longer for him, but on my end, it probably was, I think, in the spring when he brought me on and brought up the idea of me helping with his documentary. And since then, we've been meeting like weekly, and we've been putting in a lot of work on just kind of sharpening it up and cutting out parts that might not add to the overall narrative, and just overall trying to make it the most powerful that it can be, because I think that the message was there from the very beginning. It was just a matter of making sure that it was fully realized by the end, which is now. So I'm really fortunate to have been able to work on this documentary, and at the end of the day, it is Neill's, but I feel that it was a very fun, sometimes strenuous, but for the most part, fun journey.
And you're full-time employee here at ECAT. So this was work above and beyond. And how did you deal with that?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where, I, in my being able to work on films is a bit of, let me think of the right ways to phrase it. Me being able to work on films is a method of my creative process and ways. It's a way in which I can express myself creatively outside of my regular work hours and efforts at ECAT. And so the opportunity to work with Neill on this has been fulfilling in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Good. And the documentary itself was started many years ago, wasn't it, Neill? in concept or in reality. Let's put it that way.
All right, reality.
Right.
All right. So, and actually, I think I give my mother full credit for the idea. She was the one that brought up and the title of the movie, Downsize Me, which I was trying to figure out another title, but I just couldn't find it.
There was no better title.
And yeah, there was no better title, but I had these friends who were nagging me to saying, "You're going to get sued." And I was like, I'm done, kind of thing. And I looked it up. I looked up a lot of things, but it was, I don't know when she brought it up exactly, but I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and it was kind of like a really good accident where, and I did mention in the movie that I was going to a walk-in clinic to get a DOT card, which is Department of Transportation card. And when you pretty much have a job where you're driving commercial vehicles, that's pretty much what you need. That's the law.
Mhm.
And I did mention that I was just on the verge of getting that job, and I just was going to get it. And again, that's when I found out that I was diagnosed. Now, I forgot if it was before or after my mom said, I want to do a movie where I eat healthy things for a month. And I was like, that's a good idea. But again, I forgot if it was before or after I was diagnosed. I tried to make that movie, it just wasn't working. And then I was on, eventually, I was slacking. I wasn't watching my health like I was supposed to. I went in for a checkup. The doctor said, your health is not doing good. I would like you to shoot yourself up with 24 units of insulin. I'm not going to lie, that gave me such a wake-up call and a scare that I said, okay, it's not tomorrow, it's now. I have to do what I have to do. And I started losing a lot of weight. I had a lot of success in changing my health and getting healthy, that's where I said, I could make a movie about this. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it has the ability to be shared with lots of people who will be influenced by this movie, and hopefully influenced to the point where they will start their own journey to good health. Okay, so Joe, tell me, what was your part that you felt was most impactful and influential in the movie?
There's a few moments where Neill goes on these monologues that are paired with inspiring music that really helps the audience to get into his perspective and really feel what he is feeling. I know I'm biased because I'm the one who edited the movie and produced the movie, but I feel as though those are the moments that you can really relate to him the most. But there's also a lot of really informative parts as well that I think are very, very impactful, where resident nutrition expert Carly Walker was able to come in and do an interview with us and talk about some of the ways that you can maintain a healthy lifestyle, not only changing a lifestyle, but maintaining it, eating healthier, exercising, and just kind of getting into the specifics, and also talking about some of the, I guess you could say, health myths that we hear about every day. For example, the 8 glasses of water. We were really interested in that idea of, oh, you need to drink 8 glasses of water. You always hear that, but like, where did it come from, and is it really true? So, we were able to ask her questions like that. And once you see the movie on October 31st, you'll be able to get an answer from an expert in that regard.
And when is that movie? Is it going to air on ECAT?
It is October 31st. You'll be able to see Downsize Me. That's Halloween. We thought that the holiday release is always fun and gives people an extra thing to look forward to. So maybe when you get back from trick-or-treating with your kids, you can watch the movie and feel bad about all the candy you're eating.
Okay. But you can also see it on YouTube.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
So on Halloween, you'll be able to watch it on not only ECAT's channels, but also on demand on our YouTube page. That's probably the main source of where people will be going to watch it. But you can also catch it on our channel and on our website and all our social medias. So it'll be out there for you to see. It's just a matter of you seeing it.
Right. So if you don't have cable, you can go on the website, which is eastoncat.org. That's eastoncat1word.org and find it. And also we have a Facebook page. I bet it's going to be on there too, right?
It will be. Yes, it will be. There, YouTube, Facebook, YouTube, maybe some of other social medias as well.
Great. Okay, and so Neill, the same question to you. What was do you feel was the most important message and to the viewers? What was most influential in your opinion?
I think just me being 44 years old, but at the time I think I was younger when I started making it, obviously. But I think that when I'm watching it and talking about how my health just I got better. Like my health has made so many improvements that it inspired me that it's like it's not as hard as people think it is.
Mhm. Well, so you were influenced, not only the audience, but you personally were influenced by the making of the movie itself,
Yeah.
and having produced the different segments which constituted your whole message. So now we're going to watch the first 5 minutes of the documentary. So let it roll, Adam.
As a pastor, I have obligations across the spectrum of life. I have to speak to a number of issues, political issues. One of the things that struck me, I was watching a YouTube video with Dr. Richard Carmona, who was the Surgeon General of our country. And he said that someone made the mistake of asking him what he thought a health crisis was. He normally gets asked questions about how he would respond in an earthquake or in a terrorist attack or some level of crisis. But he was thrilled. He phrased it as the person asked the wrong question to me as to what I thought the real health crisis of America was. And the real health crisis of America to me is obesity.
My name is Neill Anderson. I was born in Easton, Massachusetts. I was born in 1980. I graduated from the Oliver Ames High School in 1999. In 2012, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I really ignored my health declining. I never really saw the doctor until it was kind of an accident. There was a time where I had to go to the bathroom a lot, and everyone was like, this is not healthy, go see a doctor. And I kept putting it off, saying, it's nothing. I got a job working for this company where I was gonna drive a truck for them, but the requirements were I needed a Department of Transportation card. I went to a clinic to get one, and I was doing everything to pass. The problem is I knew that I wasn't in the best of health before I was getting the card, or while I was in the process of getting it. And they told me in the middle of it, they were just like, sir, you have type 2 diabetes. And I'm guessing it was January of 2006. I was working at a job for 5 years and I got laid off. I needed a job, so I ended up working at a gentleman's club as a bouncer. I hated that job. It wasn't every night, but it was almost every night. I would go to McDonald's and it just became a routine. Pizza, hamburgers, French fries, soda, candy, just stuff that I shouldn't have been eating.
Obesity is something of a terror within. Obesity strikes all aspects of American life at a time in which we've never produced more food. We've never had more abundance in our country. And yet we have an entire population, particularly of young people, who are fighting obesity. It obviously has to do with the level of activity. It has to do with the kind of overly processed foods we eat. has to do with our habits of being too sedentary, but we're in an unnatural pattern. We have an obesity and food crisis in this country.
I preach on a lot of topics, but when you talk about food, it gets very personal and people react. I get more negative and positive reactions to those sermons than I do on anything theological, really, which is fascinating when you think about it.
This is Steve Wilson, the pastor who I introduced you at the beginning.
It's remarkable how heavier in general we are, like, than almost every other country on the face of the earth. People get comfortable, you know. It's an easy thing to do. It's hard to stay fit with our present lives. I mean, you're in the car half the time, other time you're sitting at the computer, other times you're sitting in front of the television. Habits are powerful stuff, whether they're biochemical habits or they're just cultural habits. They matter. Good habits, bad habits.
But no, I'm just saying that there are times I have those
Cravings.
cravings.
Hey, I think there's arguments to be made that almost all of fast food is designed to simply get you into drinking the soda.
Okay, I have a Coca-Cola in this hand and a Pepsi in the other. Now, these are the two most known soda companies all around the world. Now, before I even tried and realized I needed to change my lifestyle to get healthy, if a day went by and I didn't have a soda, that very rarely ever happened. So, and I don't think I heard what was in soda, but I never exactly read it. So in the Pepsi, sodium, 55 milligrams. Total carbs, 69 grams. 250 calories per bottle. Wow.
So, Joe, why did you feel it was, and this is to Neill too, why did you feel that having Stephen Wilson, who's a pastor of Universal Unitarian Church, and why did you feel that that was important to have him be the voice of the introduction to the theme?
Well, all right. So there is a documentary film that I saw, and I'm not revealing any names, but he mentioned a person who is in the military, and his number one concern is something that was just like a shock. And I did not, and I asked him, because he talks about obesity and all this other stuff, and I asked him if he'd be willing to just preach about, and I could tape it, about this man that I mentioned, and I showed him the clip, and he said, oh, absolutely. And I thought it was important to at least open it up. I wanted to use that clip, but I thought it was important to open it up with the number one concern to this military guy, this general, that's like something that you wouldn't expect. That's why I thought it was important.
And what did the general say?
His number one concern was obesity.
And why was that? Was that personal? Or
Well, it's in the first 5 minutes. So
I
we
know,
did
I
It's
just
in the
watch
first
that.
5 minutes. So
I understand
Like
that.
we're kind of like we're repeating things over, like, you know what I mean?
Okay. But as a general, was he concerned about it for his military
well, for the
personnel?
nation that
Well, he's
has-
the attorney general too. That's
Yeah.
you know, important context.
but he, just to say it, because it was taking us over, obesity.
Okay. So it is a number one concern because 65%, isn't that the current percentage of people in the United States who are considered obese?
I believe
or
3 and
overweight?
5 is the stat we use in the first 5 minutes of the movie. 3 and 5, not even the United States, world. I think another reason that Stephen Wilson was in it is because of the connections that you have to him. I think is important because you've known him for a very long time.
Yeah.
Like, he was in the movie long before I came on, right?
Yes.
So I didn't want to,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, it was, like I said, it was just originally I wanted if he would be willing to just do the opening, and he was willing to do it. And then it was like, you know what? Because of that opening, maybe it was important to at least have an interview with him as he and I just sat down and just talked. about my past and some changes that I made.
Steve's a very easy guy to talk to, and in the same way, he's supportive of Neill and his journey because he's known him throughout pretty much a lot of it, not all of it, of course, but a lot of it. And again, the knowledge that he brings from his perspective, right? It's all about perspective and giving different perspectives to the same issue of obesity. And so being able to show what he thinks about it and how he internalizes it versus how Neill might interpret it versus how Carly might interpret it, I thought was very important to the overall message of the film.
Yeah. And if you were to, Neill, tell us in a nutshell what the message is.
I think the message is that it's not as hard to change your life. I know it could be overwhelming. I know it could be I know it could be overwhelming, but it's not as overwhelming as you think. If you really put your mind to it, the results are going to come very easy. At least they were for me.
Yeah. And every day that goes by when you utilize all of these techniques and, eating healthy, walking as you did, exercising, there are results every day. You get on the scale and you see the numbers going down.
Yeah. And I do remember talking to my I did mention it in the movie to my doctor. And like I said, it was like maybe, I didn't get into all this fancy stuff. It was just getting out there and taking a walk. And it was like, my doctor did tell me that it's like one of the best things you can do. And it's just amazing how just taking a walk every day can really make so many improvements.
Yeah, and when you walked, we also saw some beautiful places and landscapes in Easton. So that was enjoyable too. And I think for Easton residents, that's going to make the documentary more enjoyable. Now, you're David Mudd, Dr. David Mudd is your doctor.
Yes.
And that's another reason why viewers are going to be interested in this film, because many people in Easton are his patients and have been for many years. And Dr. Mudd is also a very active Easton Lion as well. And so he's giving back to the community. He must have, in that regard, he must have supported your journey.
I mention it, or not to give out so much. And I remember like how he was really pleased with my results. And he was just very pleased. He called me and just said how pleased he was.
And he, when you started out on this journey, you were, how much insulin were you taking?
24, right?
Oh, yes. Well, okay. At the time when I went to go see him, I don't know how much units I was on, but when he asked me to take 24, like that was the moment. So that was the highest I ever took.
And so what was the result at the, there was a time when you certainly didn't need any more insulin, right?
I forgot how long it took at that moment. And, okay.
No, you're good.
Okay, cool. No, I forgot exactly. So, and I know maybe there's things that are going to be mentioned in the movie, but it was like January, forgot what year it was, months. My body made so many improvements that my doctor said, just stop taking it.
And, we're reminded all the time that diet and exercise can control diabetes.
It controlled it.
Yes, yeah, really big time. So tell me some of the logistics of making the movie itself.
And I'm sorry, what is logistics?
Well, how you were going to set it up in terms of how each segment.
The ins and outs, basically.
Okay.
Of making it happen, right? Like.
Well, I think I started out by just saying that, it just felt like it was really overwhelming. And then within time, I just got used to it. And it's like, okay, I had to change my lifestyle to get healthy, kind of thing, if that answers
Right.
the question.
Well,
She's asking about the
it seems
movie,
to
making
it
the
seems to me
movie.
that it was
About
chronological.
making the movie,
Yeah.
I enjoyed making the movie, and it's
Mhm.
like I enjoyed going out on site and just getting the shots I needed to make the movie. And I enjoyed coming to the studio, and you and I were working with one another to put the movie together. If that answers it.
Yes, and also you set the movie up chronologically. You introduced the subject matter with Stephen Wilson. You then proceeded to talk about the beginning of your journey, and so chronologically, that was the scope of the movie, right? That's
Yes.
how it, and that is good because when I was viewing it, I wanted to know, oh, what's going to happen next, and that is an important element, I think, in film production.
And I was about to say that. So it's like, that's good. And thank you, Joe, and maybe it was me too, but we did our jobs.
I think so. Yeah, I think when it comes to a lot of documentaries, the idea is that you want to tell a story, whether it's chronological or out of order. Some can be very interesting at times. I think that there are probably elements where maybe we are going out of order, but it's just a matter of what is the next logical step in the timeline of the viewing timeline for the audience. For the entire time while working on this movie, I was really trying to make sure I was in the mind of the audience and thinking, well, what makes sense to come next, and what makes sense to then come after, and revealing things as we go. Originally, the idea was the reveal of something very important that comes later in the movie was originally much earlier. But I realized as we were making it, I don't want to give too much away, but I realized that as we were making it, man, like this kind of takes a lot of the thunder out of the end of the movie because you already know that this has happened. So things like that where I'm like, if the audience already knows this, then this isn't going to mean as much later. So kind of making sure that throughout the process, you're drip feeding information to the audience, right? You can do that with narrative dramas or documentaries, and I think it's very important because if you give away everything in the beginning, then what are they watching for?
And why would they want to continue to watch?
Exactly. Especially nowadays, when you have movies, especially nowadays when you have social media and people are on their phones all day, and attention is the number one currency, as many say, because people can't focus on. It's not as easy to focus on something for 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, however long it might be, without pulling out your phone and doing something else. So
Now
keeping them engaged in an interesting story is the most important way of doing it.
Yes, and you certainly did that because you changed scenes. So that's another way of keeping people attentive. So there were people talking, and then there were people walking, and there were landscapes and so forth. Now the length of the movie is 35 minutes.
45 minutes.
45.
Yep.
So you kept it to a good time span. I think beyond that, people's attention would wane a bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there are maybe other directions we could have taken it, but it would have expanded it to a lot longer. And Neill came to me with a couple different ideas on other directions that we could have gone, talking about, like you said, portion sizes and high fructose corn syrup and getting really in depth on these things. And I said, you know what? I love that you're thinking about that in that way, but also that might not be this movie.
Yeah. And I agree that it was like, as I was digging up, but it was before you came on board. I was digging up all of this stuff of, like he said, high fructose corn syrup, portion sizes, marketing manipulation, to all kinds of things. But it was, maybe this is.
But you covered those things.
We kind of let Carly cover them. I think the important way of doing it was letting the experts be the experts. Like, while Carly was the one who, and is the one, because you haven't seen the movie yet and you'll see it on Halloween, Carly is the one who is really hammering down the numbers, the facts, and how how taking control of your diabetes can work for a range of people. Neill is the expert of his own story, and he knows how he did it and how he continues to do it, while Steve is the expert of things, theological things, and he makes a reference in the movie that I thought was very, very important, that the making a religious shift is similar to making a lifestyle shift with your diet and with your health, and so we kind of let him go in that direction for that.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you feel was the biggest challenge while you were producing the film?
I'm gonna let you go first on this so I can think.
The biggest challenge. Well, I think the biggest challenge for me, I knew I wanted to make it. I had some dead ends to setbacks, to disagreements, and I know how to make movies. It's just that I'm better at working with people, and I had some people that I was working with, but
was it also a challenge for you to be more or less the star and the star actor of the movie, as opposed to some of your other jobs that you've had assisting other people?
I don't think that was. I think it was just that I just worked better with people, and then when I don't know, they moved on and COVID got into the way, I think that it was like I knew I had to make it, and time got lost during COVID, and then when I just found a sense of hope when I did the Edward Gorey project.
No, my question really is, had you had experience before being the main actor?
Oh.
And was that a challenge for you? Was a different role maybe that you had not played to some extent before?
No, I don't think it really was much of a challenge. I think my focus was to just get the movie done.
And because you lived the movie, you lived the journey, so therefore it was easier.
Two things for me. I do think there's a world where somebody could make a documentary about Neill's journey and then have Neill have absolutely nothing to do with the production of the movie, where him then also being kind of the director and having the vision. It was really Neill's vision. It was a matter of me finding a way, and not just me, because people worked on this before I got on the project, but it was a matter of taking what he had conjured up in his head and putting it on screen, because film is a collaborative process regardless of what kind of movie you're trying to make. It's very, very hard to make a movie just by yourself, and from what I'm gathering is that once it became all on you, it became much harder for you to stay the course and continue to, and the world changed and things like that, and so I think it's very important that you found somebody who could keep you going and also like have their own input, like I said, input and perspective. And so I have my own input and perspective on what I like to see in movies, just like anybody else does. And so from where I'm coming from, I think that it hits the points in the movie that it's supposed to, but maybe somebody else will feel differently. But at the end of the day, I think that as the star, director, and writer, it is a different process than if you were just the subject of the film.
So you were the producer as well as the editor. So what were the challenges when you had to sit down and edit? I mean, that's a big job, and that takes a lot of time, but it also takes a lot of creativity, which of course you have in spades, Joe. So
thank you very much.
What was your challenge there?
I would say that the biggest challenge for me was, looking at this timeline, and when I say timeline, I'm talking about in the editing booth, like the project that was sitting before me that had already been worked on for years without me being involved whatsoever, and just trying to figure out how exactly this 50, maybe an hour long project at the time was going to get completed in a way that felt fulfilling and satisfying, and just, you know, going from that like ultimate zero. Of course, there had been a lot of work done, but when I say ultimate zero, I mean from my end. Like, I hadn't worked on it yet, and so just it didn't feel like my project yet. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not, at the end of the day, it's not my project, it's Neill's project, but it didn't feel like I had any control over like where it was going. But once I started to kind of get my fingerprints on it and edit and, you know, music and kind of adjusting where things came, then it started to feel like, okay, like there's a little bit of my influence here now, where I feel like it's starting to feel like it's going in the right direction. And at the end of the day, it was still Neill's vision, right? Like, it was what he wanted to put to screen. And, you know, there were some moments where we weren't exactly, I wouldn't say that we weren't on the same page, but I would say that we weren't, well, maybe we weren't on the same page on some things, you know, just overall, like, should this moment be here? Should this moment be there? Should it not be here at all? When we're talking again, like, about the entirety of the audience's journey of watching this movie, I'm like, does this really need to be here? Or can it be earlier? Or can it be later?
And there were times where I said, you know what, you're right. It doesn't need to be there. And then there were times where I felt strong, but we negotiated and we worked together. And that's what I appreciated with you.
Yeah.
And I think that it was also, and I would like to say, and like I said, I was editing it for years, working with it for years. And then I was like, hey, Joe, come on, could you work with me? And then before I even knew it, he started working with it. And I think within 5 seconds, 5 minutes, it was like just how I saw your work, and you were just like, how it was becoming professional. And I was like, I think I can work with this guy. And so that's how it really felt with Joe.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, when it comes to the overall, like, I've never worked on a true documentary before,
All right.
but there's a level of, there's
I
just
think
a different,
you have a lot of potential.
well, thank you. There's a different style that comes with documentaries versus narratives and dramas. And so, I was just experimenting and trying different things and drawing on what I had seen in the past, which includes Super Size Me and Food Inc. and different documentaries like that talk about the current status of human health.
And I do want to say this, and I know it's something else, but George Harrison once said, former Beatle, that back when we were Beatles, we did not know what we were doing. We just followed our gut instinct. So that was pretty much right there. You were just experimenting, following gut, and that was great. Yeah. And sometimes people, and I just want to say that sometimes people have to do that. Just follow your gut instinct.
Yes, and also one important point that Joe made earlier is that when he was editing and even producing, he had to think about the audience. So he had to put himself in the shoes of the viewers, and were they on board with whatever segment you were dealing with, right?
And I do have to say that you were good at that. I did not think about that, and that's good.
Well, I also will give you some slack because it's very hard as the director, the one with the vision, the star of the movie, to like say, like to put down your ego and be like, you know what, like this just doesn't work. And it's a lot harder for you than it might be for somebody who's coming in and doing that. Like when I worked on my last movie, and I had, you know, I had worked on that thing from when it was a brainchild in my head. It was there. I don't know. I don't think I cut anything because, like, you know what I mean? It's like you feel so strongly about this needs to be here because it invokes this in the audience, and it's a moment that the story needs to progress. And it's like, from an outside perspective, somebody just like kind of brings you back down to earth sometimes by being like, that didn't do anything for me. You know what I mean?
I think that it's also, and I know it's a different, George Lucas, when he made Star Wars, I think that, I don't know if it was his wife at the time, there was a woman who got involved, I believe it's his ex now, but his wife.
In the editing?
Yeah.
Yeah, Marsha Lucas.
When she saw it, she was like, okay, you want to make a hit? We got to cut all this out kind of thing. And so I think that that's where it was with you and I.
That's why film's such a collaborative thing. Like, you can't do it on your own.
Okay.
You just can't. I mean, at the end of the day, some people can, I'm sure, but like, if you want to make something truly not even just memorable, but I mean,
But you
whatever.
gotta.
You kind of need more than one perspective.
But I think that this is where George Lucas, he let his ego down and said, "Fine."
Yeah.
I let my ego down and said, "Okay, we're doing it."
So I just want to know,
Okay.
Neil, also, did you ever collaborate with your mother? Because after all, she was the one that gave you the name of the movie, and I'm sure that she gave you ideas too. And I'm asking this question because the other day, a couple of days ago, I speaking with my son, who's a film producer and screenwriter in Hollywood, and he calls me every other day at least.
That's good.
And I remember giving him an idea, and he said, "Oh, Mom, thanks. I'm going to get on that right away." And he started emailing somebody while we were talking. And I said, "Yeah, you want to call your mother more often." And he does, but and he talks about what he's doing. So he collaborates with me. I used to teach creative writing, so he knows that he got the creative gene from his mother, not his father. So tell me about your mother. How did she play a role in the
There were
production?
other ideas that she gave me. And to be honest with you, my mom's not always my favorite person.
Aw.
We cut that out.
That's-
All right.
no, it's
My mom was a support. When I said I'm going to make this movie, she was a support to me when I first said, "Okay, I'm going to try and make this movie that you are an idea. The idea that you gave me, I'm going to try it." It was a lot of work that I couldn't prospect, I couldn't get it done. And then when I had the success that I had, I said, "Okay, I'm going to make this movie." She was a support then. She was just a support, and I thank her very much for it. But
maybe she should have been a producer.
yeah, maybe she should have.
If I knew this, I probably would have put her in as one.
Okay, I'm just okay.
Well, I think mothers, parents in general, are supporters. They're spiritually right there for you. They always have been since the day you were born, and they will always continue. You'll still be their child even when you're 44. When you're 64, you know she'll still be there for you, and she'll think about what you're doing, and she's your biggest cheerleader and fan, and I think that's how I feel I am with my own son. So, what's in the future for you? Tell me, yeah, Neil, have you thought about other productions? And
I don't want to give out so much.
No, you don't have to tell me. I just want to know, are there more?
I have been
more
taking
movies in the
notes.
future.
I have been taking notes, so yes, hopefully, but chances are there will be other movies in the future. And all I'm doing right now is just taking notes. And there was just a lot of things that I dug up for this movie that I could use for future projects.
And to let our viewers know, when he talks about taking notes, that's what he does before he sits down and does the screenplay.
Yep.
And then he shows that screenplay to other people like Joe, and then Joe he gives notes to Neil on each segment, and that is how a screenplay is written. So there's collaboration there too.
Oh yeah.
And right. So are you planning to work with Joe in the future?
I would love to work with Joe in the future. But no, Joe, if you have your own plans, that's fine. But I think that there was a very good chemistry between us. And I'm not saying it's going to be every single other project, but some projects in the future. And yes, you're going to have your own stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is the first time I ever worked on a documentary, and so it was a very new process for me, but it was a fun journey, and I'm definitely looking forward to the prospect of working on another one with Neil in the future, especially one that we could come up with from scratch. I think would be interesting because, again, to kind of go back to that core point of this movie, like Neill has been working not only on the movie for a long time, but his health for a long time. And I think that it actually really coincides with the core of the movie in general, the themes of the movie, like the whole process of making it. And so I think that that's kind of a fun element where this does feel like it's a bit of a passion project for you because it's come on for this long and things of that nature. So overall, it has been really fun to work on. And I do look forward to working on stuff in the future.
And I do want to say, and it was enjoyable to make it, whether it was with you and I forgot if just when I went out there to get the shots, and then when I would get the shots, whether they were before.
We're not talking about insulin.
Oh, no. We're not talking about movie shots. Movie shots.
That was good.
With the camera. I'm sorry, we're not talking about the insulin shots.
They got it.
Okay. But when I was going out there getting the movie shots, and whether it was before or after you came on board, but when we would go through the shots that I made, and then I would see my movie come to life through it, that was the enjoyable of something that I was working on and something that I was getting out there and making, and just seeing it come to life was just wow. Okay.
Yeah,
and I would like to give some credit to Neill as well in that regard, because there were times where there were shots that we were hoping that, man, it'd be really great if we could cut to a shot of this or this. And he's like, well, I have time this weekend, I'll just go out and get it, and then on Wednesday we can put it in. I was like, that sounds great. Let me know. And then he'd come in, he'd go and he's like, I'm getting better with the tripod, and I'm getting better with stabilizing my shots and making them look better. And over time, I saw a lot of growth in that regard too. So I do think, even though, film is a collaborative process and you can't do it on your own, but he got a lot better at capturing video and all the other things that we've talked about already to this point. So a lot of instances in that regard where he went out and really did a lot of the heavy lifting.
And I would like to, when I was doing that, I was also running out doing errands as well. It was just like, it's not like I was doing nothing. Like, while I was doing that, I was also running errands.
I do also think it's important to mention, the opportunity that we have to produce this movie under the umbrella of ECAT is very fortunate, because we're not up against a deadline, right? Yeah. Everybody's really supportive of getting this thing done and to the best possible place that it can be. And everything I've ever worked on with ECAT has been that way. So when it comes to Downsize Me, it was no different. And I think that, again, we should, big thanks to my boss and our producer, Kim Pincus, and everybody at the station who helped out. Thanks to Stephen Wilson and Carly Walker and Ed Hands, and there are a bunch of people who worked on the movie with you before, because this goes back so long that there have been people who've been in and out of ECAT since we started working on it. So, if you want to give any thanks to those people, definitely.
I would like to thank, I forgot to even mention it to him, and I remember during the while I was getting my word out there to say to people, okay, I know it's last minute.
The premiere.
There's a premiere. There's a sneak peek. You want to see it? Come to the Queeset House if you can. Yep. And then when I was there getting set up, Jason Daniels, who was Kim Pinkett here, who was the director here at this studio, when he just came, and it was like, I didn't tell you. How did you know about this? He is from Canton, Massachusetts, where my cousin Eric is, who said he'll be there. And when he said to Jason, I'm going to Neill's premiere, that was just a thank you for coming. I really appreciated it. And your friends too. I forgot their names, and I'm sorry
that's
for
that. Right. Hey, that's okay. They just came to enjoy a good movie.
And I am so happy. It was just one of those, they deserved. I shook their hands and said, thank you for coming. I appreciated it.
I appreciated their support as well. It was very nice because it was last minute,
Yeah.
And I appreciated you for coming too.
Yes, we do appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, anyway, all of that aside, what has been the biggest what's the opposite of disappointment?
Jubilation.
Thank you. What has been the in making the movie?
Maybe the most fulfilling thing?
Yes, the most fulfilling. What do you feel good about?
I think that. All right. Nothing.
You know, I guess what I would say is, and I think that you already kind of touched upon this, but just that feeling of like, you know, from the point where I started to where we are now, there's been a lot of ideas in our brains, his and mine, that have come to fruition that are present in the final cut. And that's very, very satisfying and fulfilling. To finish something all the way through is a really awesome thing, and I would encourage you to try it. But otherwise, I mean, just this entire like the entire journey. You know, I've been here for the ride, and having the chance to again see this thing from not beginning to end in its entirety, but the beginning of my involvement in it, which I would say again is probably since last spring, like maybe, near the beginning of the year 2024. And
so what advice, Joe and Neill, would you give to people who think they might like to get involved with making movies?
Well,
what would be the advice?
I would say, all right, get stuff written out, get somebody that you can collaborate with, and make sure that there's a good chemistry with that person that you want to work with. And for me, and I did hear that Joaquin Phoenix has this same problem. When I saw myself, boy, did I cringe in so many ways, but I was also satisfied that I did it.
There's a lot of actors who don't like looking at themselves on screen.
Well, like I said, I know it's Joaquin Phoenix mentioned it, but I know there's other ones that I can't.
Yeah, plenty.
So it's like, just be aware that if you see yourself on film and you cringe, it's a very normal thing.
Yeah.
So that's some advice I can give you.
That's pretty good advice. I would say personally, for aspiring filmmakers, young filmmakers, I think that I've always thought, what would I say to young filmmakers? What's my best advice to them? I feel like I know it's very cliche, but just going out and doing it, right? I mean, there's so much time spent, and look, I think I love writing too. I feel like aside from writing, because writing is very important, but you just got to do it. And like, I know it's a creative process, but there is also an element of productivity where you do want to be making progress on your project, what you're trying to accomplish, know what you want to accomplish, and figure out what it's going to take to make that happen. And once you have a semblance of an idea of how to make it happen, you have to be willing to take a leap of faith, because a lot of the time, at least in my perspective, like I didn't go to film school per se. And in college, I mainly did journalism. So I wasn't always with the film people, and I took a lot of film classes, but I wasn't necessarily in with those people in the way that I could just be like, hey, like, here's my idea, and do you want to do it? So for a lot of people who don't have who don't have any of that, it's very hard to, sorry, I almost dropped my mic. It's very hard to just go out and see your project come to fruit, like taking the active steps to make it happen is very hard. So I think that overall it's just about making a plan, following through on the plan, writing, revising, and putting yourself out there, asking people. Don't be afraid to ask people for help. Don't be afraid to ask people for help is basically what I'm trying to say. And also don't forget to have fun while you're doing it. Again, it's also very cliche, but it's art, and creating art should be if it's not an enjoyable process, then at least hopefully it's a fulfilling one.
And I would like to also contribute, as I was thinking about this,
I just word saladed all over the place. Yes.
If you want to study film before you go to some fancy school, go to a local cable station and find out, or the library, because those are two really good resources.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is persevere, never give up, as Winston Churchill said, never give up, and because that is what it takes to be a successful filmmaker. It took my
And even at that point, you still might not make it.
yes.
But that's okay.
And Hollywood is filled with very talented, creative people who didn't understand that no matter how many years they're struggling and they're improving their craft, they cannot give up, because opportunities will arise in the most unusual places, and meeting people, relationships are very, very important in the film industry. And so the more people that you meet, the more success will come to you.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I want to thank Joe Taft and Neill Anderson. Neill, the originator of this film, Downsize Me, and the me is Neill Anderson. And Joe Taft, the producer and editor, thank you so much for your collaboration and for being with us today.
You're very welcome.
And thank you, our viewers. Until next time, be well.